Welcome. This is the Polemic Pool. This is Laura Castelletto, and I am here with my two good compadres. Hello, everyone. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
My name is Jeffrey Saint. How are you, Laura?
Good, ready to go.
And Jerry Bowes over here, and ready to waft on.
And missing tonight from this discussion is the fourth compadre, Steve Anderson. I just think we should note that he's unavailable to be here for the last couple weeks, and he said to please have the podcast without him, and hopefully he'll join us for the next one.
Indeed.
Yes.
Okay.
And tonight we're going to be discussing death. And it's a weighty topic. Don't go away. Don't run away. I think we need to think about death more, and we need to look at it in a cool light of reason and with our hearts as well. But it's something that needs looking at, and the very fact that we didn't get together and do this podcast last week, I think, is because of the topic as well. So I thought I would lead off by just saying the very few things that I do have to say about it, and then ask you guys to share too, and see what we can come up together, what we see. And the first thing I wanted to say was that I think the idea of death with dignity is nonsense. And I've given birth and I've vomited, and there was no dignity in these things at all. And if someone had told me I had to give birth with dignity, I would have felt it was an impossible task, and you just need to do it. And the second thing I'd like to say is that I am not bothered by dying, but the process that leads up to death. I'm not bothered by death, but I'm bothered by dying, by the last stages. The stages of it are scary to me.
That's where the dignity comes in, is in the dying process, not death.
Okay.
Death with dignity really doesn't make any sense. Dying with dignity is where we concentrate our efforts.
But
hospice is all about giving a dying person dignity in those last usually weeks, days.
Yeah,
and
like someone might have to wipe you, and that's horrible to think about, and none of us want to think about that. But
or wipe you out,
or that,
something.
Just trying to lighten it up a little bit here.
But we're all going to die, and I don't know if what you think happens beyond that, but let the audience know that none of the three of us is buying some pat explanation of life after death and being comforted by that.
Well, I was thinking, as is appointed unto men once to die, and after this the judgment.
You think you're going to be judged, Jeff?
I used to.
Oh.
Well, that is a typical. That would be the mainstream response.
Here locally, and probably within the United States at large, if you polled most people, they'd hold that. Of course, that is a particularly, I don't even want to say Judeo-Christian. It's a particularly Christian point of view.
Jewish.
Yes, it's more American than it is would be European.
European.
Even.
That's why I was careful not to say just Western Hemisphere or anything like that. It's kind of more very U.S.-centric anymore. But
I don't think the notion of a hell and a heaven holds together.
But that used to be what scared me about it the most.
Hell?
Yes.
Yeah.
The judgment,
but
passing that judgment.
I've thought about that a lot, and logically, it doesn't hold together. Could there be some type of consciousness, which is the concern with death? If you get beyond the uncomfort of dying, you ceasing to exist as yourself, or your consciousness going out of existence, is the thing that scares us all. And I don't think that is all that bad of a deal. I think we need to get past the notion of Jeff and Jerry and Laura not being Jeff, Jerry, and Laura anymore. We need to get past the idea that that's the most horrible, horrible thing in the world. And we were talking recently here about quantum physics, which I think is science, yet opens up whole new realms to science, and at the same time says science can't quite reach it. So there's some other area beyond science that we know, and beyond religion that we've been taught. There's a lot of area there, and I really enjoy thinking about what might happen after I die, although I'm completely sure, he's giving me the woo look, people, I'm completely sure that that I can know nothing about it, but yet I can think about it, and I can think of many scenarios that are possible. But one of them is, boop, I'm gone. And
well, that's
a strong possibility.
That is definitely a possibility. Boof, we're just gone. There's just nothing. And I have my own particular, rather non-mainstream views about what might happen after death, but I also recognize that I could be totally mistaken, and if there was a different option, it would be poof, there's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So poof, there's nothing is on the table for me, and something that I readily admit is a readable possibility.
Well, let's let's disambiguate death here. In the physical sense, Jerry.
Disambiguate away.
In the
love that word.
In the physical sense.
Wait till he says concatenate. Concatenate,
yes. Let's disambiguate concatenation, which we could do, but we're not. That's not what we're doing here. I don't know if you've experienced anyone dying in your hands. I have,
no.
and I'm not talking in that gentle pass out of this life. I'm talking in a car accident, strapped into a seat, upside down, with a hyperextended cervical. It's a horrible thing. I literally felt the last 3 heartbeats of this man's life. And that's because I saw the accident. I knew they needed help. I pulled over, told a bunch of people that had phones, dial 911, crawled into the vehicle through a broken, it was an SUV, it was a Jeep SUV, crawled in through the back window, which was broken. The driver was able to get out, but the passenger was not. He was wearing a seatbelt. And in this case, the seatbelt may have more caused him his life than anything else. But I couldn't get around to do compressions. It wouldn't have helped with the broken neck. I couldn't do compressions. I couldn't do mouth-to-mouth. There was nothing I could do. I had my hands around his neck. I felt the arrhythmias. Then I felt 3 strong heartbeats and nothing. And several minutes later, when the paramedics got there, and I waited inside the vehicle till they did get there, and it took quite a while. One of them, they were told there's a guy inside the vehicle with him who wasn't part of the accident, and the guy leaned down with a fireman and stuck his head in, and he said, "What's going on?" And I said, he died about 13 minutes ago, best I can tell. That if you examine him, you'll find that he has a broken neck, felt the last 3 heartbeats. I couldn't do compressions. There's been no heartbeat since. That was I'm not going to say it was transformative, but it was a very different experience for me. Not one that I hope to have again, but I wouldn't not try to help somebody because it scared me. But in the physical sense, he was just gone. He was physically here, and then he was physically, as far as being alive, he was no longer alive. So poof is right if you're talking about physical life. And I don't know what else there is to talk about.
Well, Laura brought it up, and it's kind of like the basis for most religions. It's the consciousness thing. Consciousness is, it's the big elephant in the room it's what motivates us in religion, in spirituality, in philosophy. We're all very centered on our consciousness and on our perceptions and our thoughts and we are definitely afraid of losing that sense of personhood, of identity, that consciousness is. Now, we're all very familiar with the physical, biological death. The hope that religions assert is that the consciousness will extend. It will extend into an afterlife of some sort, or perhaps into, what do they call it, reincarnation.
And that is something that gets so convoluted. There's so much obfuscation. There's so much subterfuge in that very idea that it's the consciousness. They use this term. Can I talk
about it too before
soul and spirit?
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh
no, I'm not objecting. I'm just saying they use terms like your spirit goes on. Or your soul goes on, or whatever. It's not.
But the issue of consciousness. Do you agree with Jerry that is the thing?
Well, if we're using, I guess I should ask: are you using consciousness somewhat synonymous with the spirit or the soul as it's presented in
well, it's named by
religion.
different people in different
Ways.
circumstances.
That's kind of what you're talking about.
But I think that most of us recognize that we have some sort of consciousness, a center of identity.
It's undeniable, right? You agree, Jeff?
You'll grant that much.
I guess I have to go along because
if we lobotomize
to
you,
the
we
extent,
lost you, right?
Yes, but I don't know. You know, when we talk about
asleep,
consciousness, see that's where I was afraid we were going to go, to that dividing line between I'm awake and cognizant of my thoughts, and I'm asleep and not cognizant of my thoughts.
It's a natural place to go because that's what we're most concerned about.
Right.
So when you go to sleep and you don't remember your dream, and you wake up in the morning, if you hadn't have woken up, would you have just been gone for all intents and purposes?
It is fascinating, isn't it?
One question I've been playing with just a little while ago was, what if I died every night when I was asleep, and I woke up every day, but I had the memories of the Laura from the day before, and I was experimenting with that, walking around thinking about that and thinking, would I care? Does it matter? And kind of relates to the idea of loading your consciousness into a computer. In the same way, what if I have all the data from old Laura, but she's dead and gone, and I'm the new Laura? I don't want to go off on a crazy road. I want to go back.
That goes into being immortal,
I know.
Going on forever.
I know, but I feel that secular people who put their hopes into somehow immortality through a computer are on the same kooky path as the person who thinks Jesus is going to hold their hand and they're going to have 17 virgins and they're going to have Valhalla. It's another desperate attempt to cling to our consciousness. And I would like to offer as another possibility the idea that perhaps if we have anything that recycles, that goes beyond, of consciousness sort, perhaps it could simply be absorbed into the other living things around us. And my mind goes there when I speculate about consciousness. And I think, how comforting. We think of it as terrifying. But is it not possibly the most comforting, blissful thing that could happen? And we were talking right beforehand, Jeff, about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how you can't be at the highest level of awareness for long. You can't stay there. But what if it was staying there and you checked out of other needs and you were part of this entire universe of life, the life force, and you were absorbed into it? And I'm okay with that.
You know what that reminds me of a little bit? It reminds me of the Emersonian idea of God as the oversoul. And it's, to me, the most attractive idea of what the deity, God,
high five,
might be. The oversoul, I don't know if you're familiar with it, is the idea of a one singular consciousness. It's actually a very Eastern idea. Emerson was drawing upon the Eastern thought, and that we are all linked to the oversoul through our own consciousness, and that upon our passing, our consciousness is reunited with the grander consciousness.
Okay, so we're linked in a way that we don't realize we're linked.
However, don't you ever feel
No, I'm asking. Is that right?
Yes, but don't you ever feel that way?
But no. there are suspicions.
Do you ever just feel that way? You
actually,
get up on a mountaintop?
Yes, I do. I actually do. This is where I differ from my atheist friends, and that is, in truth, I am a transcendentalist, and that I do feel the linkage. I've looked at it, and I've studied this thought, and tried. I've delved into physics a great deal and tried to be very rational about it, and I have come down on the side that I think there is just enough suspicion out there for me to say that I think it's a possibility.
Oh, I'll grant you the possibility. That's not the argument. I think the argument on something like that is the probability, and I don't think we're going to have an answer for
No, we're not going to have an answer.
Probability
We're not
for
going to
a
have an
very,
answer.
very long time.
No.
And if we did get an answer to the probability, what would we do if we didn't like the answer?
Well,
you can cook the data all you want, but boy, there's nothing
it.
coming back from that.
No.
So
Well,
Then it's
I
poof,
can
it's all
answer
gone.
that.
Then it's poof
What
and all
you
gone.
do is you go, okay, I'm going to live my life as best I can.
It comes down to very humanist notions, right? Is that what you're trying to say?
So there's a quote. described to actually
Either
source
way,
from 2 or 3 different
whatever
people that
happens
comes
after you
together
die,
that says
that.
there is so much good in the worst of us and so much bad in the best of us. It doesn't behoove any of us to talk about the rest of us. Sounds very Mark Twainish, but
Nice.
But
what
it.
I'm saying
I like
is,
it.
okay, so right now we've got some really atrocious things happening in Iraq, perpetrated by ISIS, Sunni Islam, and we've got a Shia response to that, which is, creating a very, we're at the thresholds of the Iraqi state going down into almost, the asymptotes of an irreversible and very, very, very bloody civil war. So we take all of the happy, good, positive thinking people. We have to account for these guys too, who
Right.
have no regard for life and the consciousness you're talking about.
Sure they
but
do.
are still,
They love their children.
No, they don't. They will kill them just as quickly as you will look me in the eye and say they love their children, and they've proven that. But here's the thing: what I'm saying is, they're part of that. They're woven into the tapestry of that universal consciousness too.
Okay.
So, given that manifestation on Earth, is it balanced between good and bad,
Well,
or is there no quality of goodness or badness to it?
I can't tell you. I don't know.
No, how do you think about it?
It's a good question.
Well, how do I think about it? All right, here's how I think about it. I think that we all, through our lives, learned something about the world, the universe, the cosmos. It may be through interpersonal relationships. It may be through our studies. It may be through art or literature or whatever else we might be engaged in. But we all gain some sort of perspective. And that if there is the oversoul that I was speaking of, a grand consciousness, that upon our passing, we bring what we have come to know of life, the world, the universe, and bring that knowledge, that perspective, to the oversoul. And in a sense, it is a way for the universe to know itself.
Which the living universe is actually, as far as we know, confined to this planet.
And you see, what I like about
Confined
it...
to the planet.
You're
talking about knowledge.
No, I'm talking about life.
Oh. Well, I think it could extend beyond.
Consciousness is only in living
I
things.
think
Right.
the operative words were as far as we know.
As far as we know.
Right.
Yeah.
But the reason that I say that is because all of these things that you're saying tie into living things. And there's something ineffable about living things, and science can't put its finger on it. So,
Well, yes, it
But-
can,
but-
and it has.
well,
It's defined.
you can
yeah.
define it,
Yeah.
but what is it that makes things alive? And I think the idea of an oversoul is like the idea of a living things. They're very, to me, they're very, very similar.
And some people have talked about the scale of consciousness, from lesser organisms to more advanced
Right.
organisms, and even to things like plants and even material objects.
Okay, I gotta say something weird, but as
Well, we're in that zone right now.
as existence
I don't
exists,
usually talk about this.
It
I usually don't
creates
think about this.
existence out in front of it as it goes. It appears to me.
Oh, well,
And
that's a great model, analogous to the universe. It
Yes.
creates itself as it goes.
Yes. And I think about these things a lot, and I try to think about them. I try to have thoughts smarter than I am.
Okay, so
Okay.
the universe is constructed of billions of galaxies, constructed of billions of stars, yielding trillions upon trillions, which isn't as fun to say as billions, but trillions and trillions of, let's just call them points of light, all right, for the purposes of this discussion. Is what you're saying, and correct me if I'm way off base, and I probably am, because I don't like this squishy, wishy, metaphysical
That's
kind of
exactly
discussion.
what I like.
But are you saying the universe, which is expanding into space it creates to accommodate itself, is basically our consciousness that is
Can I
expanding
give
as
this
it
one?
goes into itself?
Then you
No,
have
I'm
to
asking
think
you,
Go
about
Laura.
ahead, because I have my own
I'm
ideas. Go
asking
ahead.
you,
I don't
yeah.
mind. I'm
Okay.
interested in hearing yours.
Yeah, I'm asking you, Laura.
One of my favorite models for thinking about things is nature. Nature. And edge states in nature are the places where there is the most life and the most stuff happening. edge states being where the land meets the water,
Yeah, boundaries.
where the
Physical
forest
boundaries.
meets
Right.
the prairie. Those are areas where there's a lot more going on, a lot of possibilities happening. So the edge states of the universe are like us. And the ideas that we're talking about right now are those edge states where science meets metaphysics. I'm drawing a parallel between nature and the thought processes as well, which I think are entirely natural. I think your computer is part of nature too, just like a monkey uses a stick, or a beaver makes a dam, or a bird builds a nest, and you got this computer. I see it all as part of one big thing, all, all very unified, and not. I don't separate out good and evil. Like, I don't even see that as very effective, although it's a good question. I feel that if I start with good premises, I will get much better results if I start somewhere useful. So I always try to reinvent death and reinvent what might happen. And
Well, I think death has been invented pretty much
I try to
once,
rethink
and it works.
I try to go round and round and ask a different question, look at it from a different angle. And to Jerry's oversoul, I want you to jump in.
Sure.
Okay, I have something to say about your oversoul, but I want you to talk
Well,
first.
I too draw from nature as my model for trying to understand, have an understanding of the world and my place in it. And so, this is kind of hard for me, but in nature, I have tried to study the relationship between the particle and the whole, the gestalt and an individual item. How so is this? I'm trying to talk about the idea of the oversoul and an individual consciousness. The individual consciousness is the singular particle. The oversoul is the grand collection, the gestalt. And I see a number of relationships between, and sometimes it can be paradoxical, but a number of relationships in nature that unify the particle to the grander scheme. And I think if the oversoul does exist, there is some sort of relationship between the individual consciousness and the grander consciousness.
Okay, so
using nature as a model.
We've talked about quantum mechanics, as you alluded to earlier. One idea in classical physics is the energy of the universe is a constant. We can neither create nor destroy. We can neither add to nor take from the constant of energy within the universe as we understand it in classical physics. That means that whatever energy you have, Jerry, and you have, Laura, and I have, existed before we were born and will exist after we die. Okay? We change our form. Right now, your energy is in human form. But the sum total of your energy existed in the universe before it became your human form. And the same thing is true. Did you have to do that, Jerry?
Go on.
Well, what I'm asking is, are you ascribing the idea of consciousness in the universe to energy in the universe? Are you equating those two things? Or is someone else equating them? And did Emerson equate them, do you believe? And he wouldn't be the only one. I mean, others certainly have ideas of universal consciousness. So that's my question. I mean,
I don't have a definitive
a belief. Ask me if you believe that's what it was, or do you personally believe that's what it is?
I don't think of it in those terms. I understand what you're getting at. Here, I'm going to sidestep that a little bit, and maybe I can enlighten a little bit of what I've been trying to say. Is that one thing I like about the idea of the oversoul and the consciousness is that it's something that doesn't exist outside our universe, but is part of our universe. And that I like. And so whatever energy equation is involved, I just don't know. I used to like to balance chemistry formulas so that it would just match up just so. I don't know how this matches up. I have no idea.
Well, I wanted to say something about the oversoul. And one idea that I thought of that I really was enchanted with was I was thinking about, we've evolved, and life on Earth started out as a little slime in the water, and now we have us. How cool! But I thought of all the people dying, all through time, and what if something clung on? What if there was some spark left of consciousness? And I thought, well, what if it was formed out of people who died? What if we made God? We being humanity.
Well, I believe we did.
In a sense, this
I
whole
know,
idea
but I don't
is
mean
that
it in the way we made a religion up. I mean it in some profound way.
Now,
what if your dying consciousness somehow clumps tighter because of all the other dead conscious humans that died? And
okay,
it's
but
clumping
then
somehow.
you're begging a question, and I guess I'm going to have to ask the question.
Mm-hmm.
So I give in to my beggars. And that simply is the first person on Earth to live, the first person on Earth to die, the first living thing on Earth that died. Let's just leave it at that. Started God? And it was the consciousness of that one thing?
No, after 1 million people died.
Oh, so there has to be a critical mass to create a God.
Yeah.
Well, now
in the same way that a monkey became a human.
I can get around that real easy.
I can too. I'm thinking...
But you can't explain, why do we speak with words? Why do you have a computer? Why
those are easy.
Why are trees tall?
Well, not all trees are. Laura, you got to go deeper.
You know what
go
I'm saying
deeper.
here, though?
No, I
is
don't.
that all of these elaborate things have developed because of life. Amino acid chains that have the power to kill you or give you an erection or make beer or, amino acid chains.
Amino acid chains don't turn me on that much, Laura.
They turn me on a lot in many ways. The potential there with just the basic elements of life that form and have, the power to make a venom in a snake that will make you drop dead, or the power to make you high as a kite, or save
the power
your life.
to heal you.
Heal you. There's so much potential there that you don't know is there, but it comes out of what already exists, right? So I'm just saying, if there's some consciousness outside of our bodies, I'll bet people made it, formed it.
Well, that actually would go hand in hand with the Emersonian concept.
Yeah.
Which is actually an Eastern concept, too.
And I have no idea what it would be like, and nor would I pretend
to
try and
what
tell you.
is... I hate this question being asked of me.
Well,
But where did the first one... Where did the first one come from?
But the edge states are fun,
but
even
listen,
to a scientist.
great, but we're so far off that. Where did the first life form come from that died to create the 1/1,000,000th of the threshold population for this consciousness that you called God a few minutes ago?
That's the same problem that you have with where did life begin. It's
Yes,
exactly the same
I know.
problem. And it's the problem with the Big Bang Theory.
It's a problem with every theory of origins of life and our
here's
planet.
my answer. Life is infinite. This world, this universe is going to collapse in upon itself and yet be
you don't
created
know that.
and move on.
Wait.
Infinity.
You're making an assumption that the universe is going to collapse in upon itself. That's an argument that has as its foundation a quantity of mass in the universe where the gravity exceeds the elasticity of the universe, and it expands, it slows down, and then the gravity is enough to take over and start pulling it back together, and that goes very well into the idea that this may not be the first rodeo for this universe either.
Right.
It's an oscillatory.
But see, Jeff...
on a grand scale.
Except the oscillatory universe is no longer in vogue. It's not the current
I get that,
notion
but that's
of it.
what Laura was
But
just...
yes,
so
and
I'm saying
understand.
that assumption is difficult
So
to work with.
here's my take on that, or my answer to that. It has to do with the perception of time. It's Einstein this time. Man, this is an area where it's also on the edge of my understanding, so I'm not very good at this.
But that's why you're free to be creative there, in that edge place. And don't let science, Jeff...
Well, this is a very scientific understanding.
Chain you down to what is already known.
Okay, well, this is already out there. It's just not very well understood by most people, including myself.
Yeah.
And that is that the past, the present, and the future exist simultaneously in Einstein's concept of time. This is a very difficult concept to wrap one's head about. We think in a linear fashion in time, and so that's our perspective of it. but it's not. It may not very well be the universal perspective.
Right.
In the past, and the present, and the future. Actually,
and in
all
that,
exist at the same time.
And in that realm, why would we mourn you dying? Because you're still living.
The reason you mourn the death is because of the absence of the physicality of the person.
You're going to miss them. Yeah.
All right.
But
now,
from that timelessness perspective, you can handle it a lot better.
Oh, I don't know that you can handle it better. That gets into that's a very romantic notion. That gets into the stuff that I was
You're the same
raised
person
with.
That was talking before we started making the podcast about being upset about a desecration of a grave.
Of a family grave, and it wasn't necessarily
and that's
desecrated,
exactly
it was
what
stolen
you're now
from.
trying to dismiss.
No, I am not dismissing it.
Things that you've constructed in your mind that are important.
No, that
You see what I'm
twists
saying?
it a whole lot.
I'm a little bit off
not
on
there.
That. I don't quite get that.
I don't think it related, so I need you
should
to rewind.
Should I explain?
Yeah, please. Rewind, reset, relevel, and
Jeff,
recalibrate.
We were talking about death today, and it just so happens that yesterday, Jeff's mother's grave was robbed of its flowers, and the gravestone was tipped over.
Family grave, not mom's, but family grave.
Some fools came and took the lovely potted plants and stole them out of the planters in a graveyard.
See, this puts this idea of what death and our relationship to death is on a very much more human, emotional level, rather than in an intellectual, philosophical discussion of consciousness doesn't go on that.
Right.
It puts it down on a much more realistic level, the kind of thing that you were talking about before.
And I actually had a surprising, in one sense, perhaps, not surprising at all in another. I had a very visceral reaction. It had nothing to do with the monetary value of the flowers and the time I put into selecting. It had nothing to do with that. I reacted viscerally to the disrespect of family members who were buried beneath those flowers that I put there.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't put them there for them. And I know that they, as much as one can know something, I know they didn't talk amongst themselves in their adjacent graves and go, what the hell was he thinking mixing those two kinds of flowers together over my head? Screw him. You know what? Let's just get up tonight and toss them out. Let's screw it. I know, as much as I can know anything, that didn't happen. Okay? Now, can I prove that didn't happen? I would be hard-pressed to do that. But I also can't prove that it didn't happen. There's no evidence for it, is all I can say. And the point I was making, Laura, to the point that you and Jerry were kind of agreeing on, is this sounds an awful lot like the kind of stuff, both for the better and for the worse, that is preached in the Christian church. And that is the idea that should you pass the judgment and gain access to heaven, you have a mansion. Everything is anthropomorphized. You have a mansion. Your consciousness is going to be my consciousness. And they used to say, Jeff, when you die, come on over to my mansion. We'll have a Coke. And, I suppose today they'd say we'll have a beer. But, when I was in church as a kid, it was always a Coke. Because if you drank beer, you couldn't gain entrance. It sounds a lot like that.
Remember, I don't go any farther with it than that. And I don't expect you to even buy what I'm saying.
I know you didn't take it there. I'm just saying it sounds like that. Let's comfort ourselves with the idea that there's a warm, fuzzy connection.
Well, here's a little thing that I actually like about that. Because I think this notion that I've been talking about is actually in many of the world religions at a basic core. Yeah. I think it's been recognized as sort of something of a natural possibility, and I think it exists in Christianity and in Judaism and Islam.
Oh, it
and
definitely
in Eastern
exists
religions.
in those.
And I'm saying science.
And in Shinto and in modern and in science too. And
where does it exist in science? Give me just
quantum mechanics.
No. It doesn't. It doesn't exist in quantum mechanics.
Well, it exists as a possibility. Particles winking in and out of existence. Particles reacting at a spooky action at a distance. Why not? They're saying.
Okay, but I don't know of
Jerry's
any.
not crazy,
I don't know of any
say.
application in quantum mechanics, and I don't know very much about it. In fact, I know so little about it, I could say I know nothing about it.
Let me tie these two together.
I don't know that they really have an application of quantum mechanics to human consciousness at the level where you're making right now.
Why not?
Well, it's not definitive.
You know,
it's not definitive, but oh gosh, I think the whole idea of what is the role of consciousness and its effect upon quantum mechanics and then upon the universe in a grander scale is a most intriguing avenue that's going to be highly explored.
Okay, so we understand that we can take two identical, let's just say particles, to keep it easy, act on one and have the other one, which is physically removed from it, react as if it was acted on directly.
Simultaneously.
We've done that. We've got that experiment under our belts. Are we saying that someday I might be able to do, through my thoughts, I might be able to influence your thoughts?
Maybe you'll wink out of existence here and wink into existence somewhere
Maybe
else.
I already have. Maybe everything that we're experiencing right now is just that momentary wink in time, so infinitesimally small that it's barely worth measuring. And that is exactly how long man has been present on the earth as we know man present on the earth relative to the cosmological timescale.
Right.
True
So
enough.
what the hell are we talking about here that really matters? We don't know. 14.5 billion years of existence of the universe, and we're cognizant of such a tiny portion of it experientially that it doesn't even seem to matter.
But the consciousness is such a big deal. I mean, yes.
We make a big deal out of it.
Yes, we do.
Just like women's orgasms.
Yes.
We make a big deal out of them.
But
we don't understand them.
We don't understand it well
Why
enough.
not?
This
I think
is
you
true.
should understand it.
Well, we should perhaps, but I'm just saying.
And we're working on it.
We're
We're working on it.
You
We're working
were
on
doing
it.
your homework, Jerry?
I do. I
Good.
I am.
Good.
I am. In both fields.
I'm looking for more homework to do, personally. I mean, let's just drag this down to the 7th grade here.
Oh,
But,
my goodness.
seriously, to lighten it up, let me ask you a question, if I may, Jerry.
What's that?
Direct. Are you
Go
afraid of death? Are you afraid of dying?
No, I totally expect it to come about.
Right, but are you afraid of how it's going to come about? Does that concern you?
Well, I must admit that I'm a little bit concerned about the process of dying. You know, that I like many people, I would not like to have a long, drawn-out cancer, for instance, where I'm degraded physically, lots of pain. It in turn creates a lot of emotional stress for my loved ones. So it's not the end that I'm afraid of. I'm concerned more about
The journey.
The journey.
So would
The process
you?
at the end.
What about this crazy idea here in the United States? You can choose your end, and you can script that process, and you can take care of all of the emotional ties with people, and then you can check out as you please, pain-free.
Well, I
But
don't
you can't come back.
I don't think that's going to fly with the religious.
I don't really care.
Establishment.
I don't care about them. I'm asking you personally. Would you do that if you could?
Well, that's like a false case.
Oh no, it isn't. There's a story
No,
that
it's
led
not a false
NPR
case.
for quite a while today of a woman who planned her suicide with her family, walked them through her death, and then died. And what's written about that from the family's perspective is she made it easy for us to get through. I didn't read the story. I only read the headlines. I should have read the story in preparation for tonight. But I'm asking you the question.
Maybe I was putting.
This is why we need to do this podcast.
Uh-huh.
Okay, the idea that you can make things pain-free is the flawed idea. The reality is bittersweet, and great joy comes with pain.
Oh, come on. That's like saying
It
you can't
does.
experience the mountaintop unless you've been in the valley.
Yeah, it is like that.
Really? You
Okay.
can't be happy until you've been
Part
sad.
of the joy of being on the mountaintop is climbing your ass up the mountain.
For some people, it's just the climb that matters. Once they get up there, it's over. They don't care anymore. It's just that climb. And if
Right.
they could keep climbing without getting up,
if
that'd
life
be good for them.
Is a piece of music. It's not the ending we want to get to. We want to hear that, enjoy that music all the way to the end. And I hope my finale is good, man. I hope everybody's crying and feeling all this love and walk away with a story and are hugging each other and resolve to carry on when I die. I hope it's an awesome dramatic scene. And,
a positive scene.
a positive scene.
Well, I hope it is too.
Do I want to have pain on there?
And for me, it's just it's not something I particularly expect.
No, no.
You think about this a lot, don't you, Laura? You're very macabre, very dark in that
I
sense.
don't feel that I'm dark, but I wanted to tie together the very physical, gritty death that we're all going to have with the metaphysical that we are trying to reach here.
That may be theoretical.
That may be, I grant you completely that it may be theoretical.
We don't know.
And but the way I was trying to connect it was by saying you were having emotions over some flowers, and I understand completely.
They weren't over the flowers themselves.
Right.
The whole act.
It was
Right.
the idea.
But
Yes.
it's the perfect little microcosm of what our emotions do when we don't know what to do with our emotions, and we don't start some premise that we're.
That's how
good
the
and
world
solid.
religions got born.
Well, let me
Yeah.
give you an anecdote, another personal anecdote. This is reality. This is counsel that I took upon myself and then gave to another family member. Unfortunately, I've gone through the roughly 7-year cycle of Alzheimer's with more than one family member.
Which is scary to me. That scares
Just
me.
two and a half years ago, little over 2.5 years ago, my mom died, November 14th, 2011. And she had Alzheimer's, that particular form of dementia. And there was a point towards the end where she was in ER, and she was hooked up to a lot of life support. And for all intents and purposes, she was still biologically viable. She just needed some assistance. And my sister didn't handle these types of events, and still doesn't handle these types of events well. Doesn't handle them cognitively. She doesn't handle them intellectually. She wants to run from them. Like so many people. If I don't see it, it doesn't exist, I can get it out of my mind. That's really unhealthy because, you know what? There was a point in time here where you cannot go back and make it right.
Right,
So
right.
the doctors asked me, because I had power of attorney, they said, Jeffrey, what is your decision here? We need to know. Keep the machines plugged in or unplug them. And I didn't want to ever have to make that decision, but I accepted the responsibility that if it came to that, I would. And so I asked them to leave the room and give me as much time as I needed with my mother while she was alive to say the things that I needed to hear me say to her, with the, and I'm going to use a soft word, hope that maybe she would be able to hear them or sense my communication to her, and I expected nothing in return from her. But I needed to hear me say these things to her while she was physically alive. And I said to my sister, when I'm done, I want you to come in and do the same thing. It's private. No one's monitoring what you're saying. No one can hear what you're saying. Nobody wants to hear what you say. But you need to hear what you have to say to Mom. Well, that was just the stupidest thing. But you know what?
It's not
I
logical,
held
right?
fast to it. No, it is kind of logical if you think about it. I held fast to it and said, now, you all need to leave. And they said, this is interesting, Jeff. We don't see very many people, if any, take this kind of an approach. Seems good.
Yeah,
They left the room, and I talked to Mom for about 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I said, Mom, you had some hard decisions to make on my behalf in your life, and they may not all have been the best decision to be made at the time, but I know you did your best. I know you bore a lot of pain to give me life, and this is a lot of pain that I'm bearing to have to give you the gift of death, because it's the only release you're going to have from this. And if there's forgiveness to be asked for, we agreed on this decision, and I hope that if you hear me, I'm greatly summarizing. I just said, I hope you can forgive me and understand that what I'm doing isn't to get rid of you. What I'm doing is done to release you. And I told her I loved her, and hugged her and kissed her. She was alive. That's why I did it. Mm-hmm. And then I walked out and said, okay, Julie, you need to go in and spend as much time as you need to spend. And she did. And then when she was done, she came out, and we all went back in the room, and I said, okay, disconnect everything. And within seconds, everything was disconnected, machines were turned off. Mom lived probably another 40 days. And the last 40 days of her life were probably the most remarkable 40 days of her life. And on a Friday night, I was living down in Kalamazoo on a project. She's up here in Grand Rapids, in Cascade. And I got a call. And they said, Jeff, she's not going to make it. She's maybe has an hour. And I said, I'm an hour away. That's not fair. It has to be an hour and a half. And I drove like
Life is like
bat out of hell. And I got up there, and I'd called my sister, who was a few minutes away, and said, meet me there. So we get in, I get in there, and Julie is there. And without verbalizing it, somehow, just walking into the room, saying nothing, Mom turned her head towards the door. She'd been non-responsive to almost everything. And it felt like she was looking at me. Her eyes were open. For all we knew, she was blind because she was so non-responsive, but she turned and looked towards the door as I'm standing in the doorway. Did she look at me? I don't know. Maybe I'm just assuming that's what she was doing. But then, as I walked across the room, it's November, I've got my winter coat on, I take off my coat. She follows me across the room. And I sat down next to her bed, and I took hold of her hand, and she squeezed my fingers. That was volitional. That was not reflexive. I've experienced both, and it was volitional because it relaxed a little while, and it just held onto my hand hard enough not to let it go. And a couple hours later, Julie has to leave, so say goodbye, say goodnight, and go. And what I said to my mom at that point was, Mom, you can't keep hanging on because of Julie and me. You have to let go. It's okay to let go. It's the most humane thing you can do. The biggest gift you could give me is accepting my permission to let go. And Julie was furious with me for a long time, may still be, but I just told her, don't go back and visit over the weekend. Because if we keep going back all of the time now, she's going to want to keep hanging on, and she's going to try. Now, there were some things going on, like internal bleeding, which is not a necessarily bad way for her to die because it's relatively painless. As far as we know, there was no pain. And I told her I loved her, and she had said to me, I love you too, which it took her, 22, 23, 24 minutes to get all of those words out. They were the first words I'd heard in months and months and months. I don't know, probably 8 or 9 months. They were the first words I actually heard her speak. And I love you too gave me the idea that there was some communication, but the barrier to getting it out was extremely high. And I left. And I got a call from hospice. I got hourly updates on her vitals. And I got a call from hospice on Monday morning. And it's just one of those things,
Mm-hmm.
When the phone's ringing at a certain time in the morning, it's
Yeah.
unlikely to be most people. It was hospice calling to say, Jeffrey, your mother died at, roughly, I guess it was like 7:20 this morning. There was an attendant with her. She'd gone to sleep about 4. All her vitals normalized, and then they just went downhill, and she passed away. So what did I do? I grieved with her, as we call it, actively. I gave her active permission. Really hard to do, by the way, but I'm really glad I did it. So I have no regrets. I managed through that as best I could, and I feel as positive as one can feel about having lost a parent or a sibling or a loved one.
Yeah,
what do you think about that?
I think that's a very human story. I've heard stories like that. I think you were very sensitive, both to your own needs and to your mother and to your sister as well. I think you were a good brother to her, and you were a good son, and I appreciate it. And I think it demonstrates the very human, emotional level that how difficult it is to miss loved ones. Let me tell you a very, very short story of my own. I lost my brother. He committed suicide, and that's a very rough way to go. He was my only brother. I had lost my parents in the previous year, so it was the end of my nuclear family. And I was very weirded out by this. It hurt me very much. I was rather mad. I was rather mad at him, of course, and a lot of people are under certain circumstances like that. And I sought some professional advice on how to deal with my fluxing emotions. And I got a very good piece of advice, which I used, and I'll pass on. In a situation where you're not able to address someone and say goodbye, what is offered is write a letter. Write it out. Write what you want to say. Write what you would have said if you could have had a final time to talk. So I did that. And then I burned it, burned the letter in a sort of a ceremony. And the idea being, up goes the ashes of my thoughts, and somehow this is a communicative process to my brother. It's all very symbolic. It's all really for you, the individual. But it was a way for me to work out a lot of the last things I needed to say to my brother. And it's
catharsis.
Catharsis.
Yeah.
Catharsis.
We need catharsis
We
in
all
life.
need
Yeah.
that when we're dealing with the close deaths.
Or big stuff. A lot of big
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the point is,
Go ahead.
He needs a minute.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Laura, do you have any perspectives on these then?
Thank you, guys. I think those are helpful, useful stories. And I think that we broke down the wall between science and emotion and the fragile life that we lead. And the time it takes someone to die. I mean, that you have to think about that too. It's not like, it's not usually an upside down in a car. Sometimes it's slow.
Indeed.
Yeah.
and having experienced some different forms of death and having been responsible, because I love animals. I love to have pets. I've had dogs pretty much my whole life. You enter into a social contract with a dog, and this is where we are more humane to our relationship with non-humans than we are to our relationship with humans.
I've noticed.
At times.
And Laura, you were saying, well, you can't die with dignity, and I'd say, yeah, you can. A turning point in my life. I was still in the ministry at the time, and I had to put a dog down that I had gotten in Hawaii. And, this little guy, Sprocket, had been with me everywhere I went. I brought him back to the mainland. He traveled with me when I was traveling all the time, and I had to put him down. There was no cure for him. He got very sick on a Sunday when I was down in Florida with him, wrapping up a project at Westinghouse, and went back to Minneapolis. And hey, what happened? I took him. I got to the point where we'd go rollerblading, and I'd keep the leash slack, and I learned go X number of blocks down, then turn around and come back, because otherwise you end up going all the way down until the dog says, okay, I'm tired, I quit, and then you got to pick him up and carry him back while you're rollerblading, and that's not easy. So I found his distance, found the median in the middle, and we'd go there and come back. So that's what I did on a Sunday morning. Went into my office, did 2 or 3 hours worth of work, came back. He tried to jump up and give me, a hello, and I'd give him his attaboys on top of his head, and he couldn't do it. He sat right back down. Kind of turned his head sideways and looked up at me, tried to stand up again, couldn't do it. And I went and sat down on the couch. Said, what's the matter, fella? And he tried to get up on the couch and just crashed into the front edge of it. Well, I took him to the vet on Monday, but I was packing up to head up to Minneapolis at the wrap of the project, the implementation, and the vet said, I think you need a longer-term solution than what I can provide since you're leaving. So I drove up to Minneapolis and checked with 3 different vets, and the last vet that I had checked with, the vet that I'd had for so long for him, didn't deal with end-of-life issues well. His words to me were, Jeff, like all living things, he's born, he lives, he dies. This is it, he's dying. Nothing I can do for it. Just, he's going to have to go. And he walked out, and that really pissed me off. Why was he so cold and so bad at dealing with it? Because he was a veterinarian, and he had just within the past 6 months lost his standard poodle that he'd had for so many years and wasn't dealing with these issues well. But I found a vet who was very compassionate, and given what was going on with Sprocket, before giving up on him, I said, well, let's do this. Triple his mass, dose him with a narcotic, a steroid, and an antibiotic. Because if it's bacterial, the antibiotic should take care of it. The steroid should prevent some of the symptoms, and the narcotic should give him a sense of pain relief, because I knew he was in pain. Dogs exhibit pain symptoms differently. And he said, this is either going to kill him or it's going to help him. Or maybe it will do nothing. My sense is that it'll probably kill him. But I'm willing to go along with it because it's not a bad idea. Mm-hmm. It won't give him any more pain. He hung on. And my agreement with the vet was after 3 days, if we don't see some improvement, we'll schedule a euthanasia. We scheduled it. I had to call him on a Wednesday and say he's continuing to get worse even with all of this. he scheduled the euthanasia for after hours. The office closed at 5. That's when he wanted to schedule it. And the IV was in Sprocket's paw, just a saline drip to keep the vein open. And I had to say to him at about 7 o'clock, look, Jim, this is your business. And Sprocket seemed to be completely healed and whole. He was there. He was happy. He didn't seem to be in pain. I asked him, are there any narcotics in the drip? He said, nothing. It's just pure saline. And he turned Sprocket off, is all I can say. He went from a vibrant dog with beautiful chestnut-colored eyes, and when I said, okay, you need to do this, he introduced the sodium pentobarbital into the line in the vein, and he said, I will tell you when he goes to sleep so that you can pet him and touch him and he won't feel any pain, but he'll still be alive. I didn't realize the value of that at the time. I took lessons away from it, which helped me with my mother. And he said, okay, now I'm going to continue. And he's monitoring his heartbeat. And eventually he died. And the moment he died, the moment there was no more heartbeat, I didn't feel it. But it was such a turning point for me because I looked at it as if he had just been turned off. And I wanted so much to just flip the switch back on for another 5 seconds. And I realized there is no coming back from that. That is, it's done. It's over. There's nothing that can be done. It may have been the right thing to do, but I got to tell you, the right thing to do was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And while I could give my mom permission, like I say, she the best 40 days of her life were probably those last 40 days because she gained so much strength to be able to let go and be peaceful and not have a fight and not have a struggle. And I do look at it that way for my own good. I don't know if that's really the way it was, but that's the way it seemed, and I remember it that way. And I changed my whole worldview and accepted what I had probably been on the penumbra of accepting for a very long time by experiencing what I did with Sprocket. And the humanity and the compassion and understanding that it's romantic to think that there's a heaven. You know, it's not romantic to think there's a hell. But I gave up on that and said, you know what? He's just simply gone. His life is over. There's no more Sprocket except as he exists in my memories.
Can I pull out something then?
Yeah.
And tie it a little bit with what we were talking about before. I think there is a lot of romanticizing about what may come after death. And it may be that the whole idea of the oversoul and my consciousness linked to a greater consciousness, you know, that could continue on in some fashion or another, is simply a romantic notion. I have tried to analyze this on a variety of levels, and I've come to the conclusion that I could be right, but I could easily be wrong. And I'm going to live my life as best as I can with the notion that nothing may at all continue. I have a small hope that it might. You might call it a little bit of a Gnosticism that way. So, I understand your point. I think most people take comfort in religion with the idea of going on, and I think that's one of its great selling points and why it's been around in the world culture for so long in so many different forms. I think comfort can be had in a variety of ways. I think there's a lot of secular comfort. I think it's just more difficult for a lot of people to get there. I don't think it's a hard road for a lot of people.
Well, it doesn't offer hope after life.
No,
it says
I think it does.
It says, well, atheists take a pretty hard line and say, this is
They
what
do.
you got, and
They
there's
do.
nothing after that.
I just don't take as hard a line.
My hope, and I do believe in hope, my hope, Jerry, is that you're right.
Yeah.
But, you know, I understand along with that hope that that means whatever goes on, all the shit that we're dealing with on a daily basis from the people that we'd like to permanently leave behind are going to be part of that consciousness.
Yeah.
You know,
Right,
but
right,
yet,
right.
as much as we have
that is true.
as much as we have our enemies on earth, and we look at them and say, just go to hell. We don't really mean go to hell in the metaphorical way of the lake of fire for all eternity and immeasurable, ineffable anthropomorphic suffering. But we say we wish that on people, and we really don't. So, all of our enemies are going to be part of that consciousness as well. Hopefully, if that plane of consciousness exists, by the time we get there, we will be able to work our way, or have worked our way through a fabric of space-time that mitigates all the bullshit that we have to put up with here, and it's a happier place. That's my romantic hope on your hope.
Yeah.
I think I get.
Yep.
This might be the last word.
Go ahead.
I won't stop you, but I am always aware of death, all the time, and the way I think about things, I try to be grounded, and I realize that life includes death and must include death, and the creative force must roll on. And if I live forever, whatever stupid mistakes I'm making, I would keep on doing forever. And you're talking about like bad people, but I don't think of them that way.
Not bad people. People who do bad things.
People who mess with you.
Yeah.
And people who mess with me, I tend to think.
Well, no, not people who mess with me. Hitler.
I have
Right.
compassion. But I have
I'm talking
compassion.
grand scale. Mussolini and Hitler and Lenin and Stalin and those who
But let me
went out of
finish
their
my
way
point.
to make other people's lives
Silence.
terrible. Make them wish for death.
But just the idea of bad people, I don't really agree with that. I feel like they are they're ineffective people, they're lost, they're misguided, and if there is something that's going to go on, there's going to be an opportunity to correct that slowly over the infinitude of time. So I always know, I have children, and I always know they're going to die. They might die before me. I've forbidden them to die before me, but they very well may. And so every time I see them, I know, like, this is a precious gift. And I've got that built in, the death already. It's already built in my mind, I'm aware of it. And I'm just saying that to have that consciousness enhances your life. Addressing death now enhances living
Yeah,
now.
I do believe that. And I'll tell you, one of the hardest things to do, and I've had to do this too many times. If you do it once, you do it too many times. And that is provide a memorial service for the children of parents that are still living.
Ooh, that's tough.
And look
a tough
them,
one.
because that is contrary to what we understand as the
How things
governance
should be.
of nature.
Yeah.
Okay, chronologically, it's just goofed up. It is wrong, and I'm not talking
But
about.
you got to back up your
I'm
focus.
not, but I'm not talking about an accident. I'm talking about parents who lose children to insidious diseases.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
they've outlived their children at that point by 30, 40 years, and they have another 25 years to go on, and to have to bury a child
But I
is the
have
wrong
no
way
sense
to do
of
it.
outrage,
That's hard to do.
and I feel
No,
obviously,
there's no point in being
and this is
outraged.
logical and secular. I feel I have no right to demand that I not be murdered or raped because.
I disagree with that.
Well, wait, let me finish. Like, I don't have expectations. A cinder block can fall on my head tomorrow, and I'm a careening, drooling idiot. Right? I could become hideously disfigured tomorrow.
Okay,
so
and that
I
cinder
don't
block
take
had no intent for you.
my vast intelligence and mind-blowing good looks for granted. I wake up and go, I'm happy with what I got.
I know you do,
Because
Laura,
it's
and
better
that comes
than
across.
it's
It drives
better
us all
than
crazy.
nothing. But it's
I like it.
everything that I'm saying.
You like it, but it drives us crazy too.
Right.
Yeah,
Not
okay,
so
let me
much.
speak
But
for
I'm
me.
celebrating
I like it, but it
because-
drives me nuts.
Everything is better than being a rock, which I see as the alternative, or a mineral. It's better to be alive.
You don't know that.
Well,
We
he's right.
you're putting everything in the perspective of carbon-based
Oh,
life.
yeah,
If
but
it's a
that-
silicon-based life, then the rocks are intelligent and alive, and
Wouldn't
they're
that
looking at
be
us and
awesome,
going,
too?
Jerry, you're a sedimentary rock. I'm metamorphic. I'm glad to be anything other than those damn carbon-based life forms out there that think they know it all.
Well,
Yes.
I'm happy to be a bag.
Is that
of,
our next show?
a bag of water, bag of ugly, mostly water.
Yeah,
well,
but you
that's-
love yourself, put yourself in perspective, understand you're going to lose people around you, and other
yeah.
people are going to be shitty, pardon my French, but they're just going to ruin your day, and they're just confused. And there's not a lot you can do about it. But you can I have brought people up that others dismissed. I've seen it
Yeah.
happen where because I had a positive mindset and gave them the benefit, they saw me have faith in them and they rose up.
You kind of did that for me a year ago, Laura, and thank you for doing that, because I was pretty down and pretty low and didn't see much by way of where I am today with what I'm doing today, And,
Are you saying you're happy?
Thank you.
Holy smokes.
I acknowledge what you did. You kind of did that for me last year. And I do believe in the pay it forward thing. I mean, I did something for a friend of mine. Bought her a gift. It wasn't cheap.
Mm-hmm.
It was something she wanted, not something she needed. And I thought she deserved something a little frivolous. And so I was, go out and find what you like. And at the very least, she found the things that were most expensive, of course, the brand that would cost more than all the others. I said, I'll pay at least half of it. Well, I bought the whole thing for her, and she said, I'm not sure I have half. And I said, you don't have to pay anything. To feel good about it, she wanted to pay a couple $100.
Better be enjoying my present.
Right? And so what I said was, you know what, I don't want your $200. What I want you to do with the $200 is do something nice for somebody else. If someone's at the gas station and they have a couple of kids in the car, and they're getting $5 worth of gas, put $40 in the cashier's till and say, don't turn the pump off until it hits 40. They probably won't even pay attention to it. They're just going to hold the handle until it stops, and they'll go, wait a minute. And when they come in and say, you can say, it's all right, somebody covered it for you. Do that, because right now there's a greater need for others to share what I've been fortunate to have for a little while here than there is for me to have it back from you. And so it balanced the whole equation, and it's that pay it forward
Broader
idea,
balance.
which I do believe in, Laura. So
broader balance.
thank you for what you helped me with psychologically and the way I was thinking about things, and in other ways a year ago. So I think your last word was really good. This has not been an easy conversation. It has been, soft and squishy, and it has been hard, and it has been intellectual, and it's been very emotional. It's been very introspective. I shared some things I didn't anticipate sharing. I had no script for my ideas on this thought coming in here tonight. And yet I feel more alive and better for having talked about it with you too. And
Which is weird.
Anybody who hears this, we are also sharing with potentially unknown people. And if someday it may be a lot of unknown people. And hopefully there's some value in it for them in that. And so Laura, thanks for the topic. It was a good one. It wasn't polemic.
There was
but
more
a
depth
good
there
topic.
than I realized.
And there's things for all of us to think about.
Oh, yeah.
And
Thank you.
feel about. So, Jerry, not to put you on the hot seat, but to turn the heat up just a little bit underneath you.
You're going to ask me what our next topic is going to be. I'm going to ask you what the
next topic is going to be.
Yes,
and let's this was a good topic. There was no arguing. We just talked about things. And it'd be kind of hard to argue anyway, but...
we don't agree, though.
Well, we don't agree, but we didn't
don't
argue about it.
No.
So,
I'm anti-polemic. I polemicize against polemics. I told you that at the get-go.
Yeah, but nonetheless, what's our next topic here?
All right.
Without specificity, just in general, or be as specific as you want.
I've been troubled by a story I read about the program Jeopardy. Believe it or not, the television program. And it has led me to ponder about the dumbing down of our society. Is that something that's actually going on? So I'd like to talk about the dumbing down of our society.
I love that topic.
Okay.
That's a great topic. I can't wait to hear you phrase that.
I'll need to come up with some
statement, because we want to narrow that down, and that's going to be fun to talk about. So let's pretend that we're on a schedule, and in 2 weeks we'll be celebrating our 200th podcast, and it's going to be on the Is America Being Dumbed Down through programming content? And,
there's a lot of ways. There's a lot of avenues. There's an educational system. Yeah. There's a variety of things going on.
Yeah.
So,
but you mentioned Jeopardy, and that's programming. So.
Well, that is programming. Yeah. That was the spark. The article I read about that, and the types of questions and what's being asked of participants now compared to 30 years ago.
I've watched the evolution of that. I was really good at Jeopardy when it was academic. And then when they got into pop culture and they started asking about rock bands of the 1950s or 60s, I'm going, okay, I can only go for... I can't use game theory, because I always applied game theory to it, take all the high value questions away from other people, because if you can answer 3 or 4 of those, you just won the game, right?
Right, and some people play that way.
In pop culture, if I would say, I'll take Elvis for 1,000, Alex, I'm going to lose.
Well, for instance,
Wait,
Justin
save
beat.
it for next
Yeah,
time.
I
All
know,
right,
it's cool.
all right.
I love the topic. It's really
all right,
cool.
Let's go
So-
to it next time round.
Jeff, I'm saying good night and thanks for listening. And
Goodbye, everyone. We love you.
And thanks for listening. Catch you later.